Welcome to Danger, the channel where we dive into the world's most chilling true crime stories. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post something. The murders of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan, often referred to in the media as the Virginia au pair murders, became one of the most disturbing criminal cases in recent years because of the shocking combination of betrayal, deception and a carefully planned scheme that prosecutors said was designed to look like an act of self-defense. At the center of the case was Juliana Perez Magalhães, a young Brazilian au pair who had moved to the United States in search of new opportunities, and Brendan Banfield, a husband and father whose secret relationship with Juliana would ultimately lead to the deaths of his wife, Christine Banfield, and an innocent man named Joseph Ryan. What initially appeared to be a tragic home invasion quickly unraveled into a complex murder investigation that exposed months of lies, manipulation and planning. Juliana Perez Magalhães was born and raised in Brazil before joining an au pair program that allowed young adults to live with host families in the United States while caring for children. In October 2021, she arrived in Herndon, Virginia, where she moved into the home of Brendan and Christine Banfield. The Banfields appeared to be a successful suburban family with a young daughter. Juliana's role was to care for their child while living in the family's home. At first, there were no outward signs that anything was wrong, but according to evidence later presented in court, Juliana and Brendan eventually developed a romantic and sexual relationship. Their affair remained hidden from Christine, who believed Juliana was simply the family's trusted au pair. As the affair continued, prosecutors argued that Brendan became increasingly determined to free himself from his marriage without facing the financial consequences of divorce or a custody battle over his daughter. Instead of ending the marriage legally, investigators said Brendan began discussing ways to permanently remove Christine from his life. During the investigation, prosecutors alleged that Juliana became involved in these discussions and eventually agreed to participate in Brendan's plan. Although Juliana later admitted her involvement, she claimed that Brendan was the driving force behind the plot and that she was heavily influenced by him. According to evidence introduced during the trial, Brendan and Juliana came up with a plan that they believed would hide the true motive behind the killings. Rather than attacking Christine outright, they wanted the crime scene to look as though Brendan had heroically defended his family during a violent home invasion. To create this false scenario, they needed someone who could be portrayed as an armed intruder. They chose Joseph Ryan, a man they had never met, by creating a fake online identity using Christine's name and photographs on the social networking website FetLife, a platform used by people interested in BDSM and alternative lifestyles. Pretending to be Christine, they exchanged messages with Ryan over several weeks. Ryan believed he was speaking with Christine herself and agreed to visit the Banfield home after being invited there for what he thought would be a consensual sexual encounter. Investigators later said Ryan had no idea that he was walking into a carefully planned trap. On the evening of the 24th of February 2023, Joseph Ryan arrived at the Banfield residence believing he was meeting Christine. The exact sequence of events inside the house became one of the central issues during the investigation and trial, but prosecutors argued that the meeting unfolded according to the plan Brendan and Juliana had created. Ryan entered the home expecting a private encounter and had no reason to suspect he was in danger. At some point after he entered the master bedroom, Brendan confronted him. A violent struggle followed, during which Ryan was shot multiple times and killed. Prosecutors argued that Ryan had been deliberately lured to the house so that Brendan could claim he had shot an intruder in self-defense. Ryan was completely unaware that he was being used as part of a murder plot. Christine Banfield also lost her life that evening. Evidence presented during the trial indicated that she was shot and killed during the events inside the home. Prosecutors maintained that Christine's death was the true objective of the conspiracy and that Ryan's presence had been engineered to provide Brendan with an excuse for the shootings. The couple's young daughter was inside the home during the incident, adding another heartbreaking dimension to the tragedy. Thankfully, she was physically unharmed, but she was left without her mother and with her father facing accusations of murder. After the shootings, Brendan called 911 and reported that he had encountered an armed intruder inside his home. During the emergency call, he claimed he had acted to protect his family after finding a strange man with his wife. Responding officers arrived expecting to investigate a possible home invasion or domestic confrontation. Inside the house, they found both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan dead. Brendan repeated his account to investigators, insisting that he had acted in self-defense after Ryan attacked him. Juliana also presented herself as someone who had survived a terrifying ordeal. In the early hours of the investigation, the evidence at the scene did not immediately reveal the full truth, and investigators carefully documented every detail before drawing conclusions. As detectives examined the evidence more closely, they began noticing inconsistencies in Brendan's version of events. Digital forensic experts recovered electronic communications that revealed the fake online profile used to contact Joseph Ryan. Investigators discovered that the messages had not been sent by Christine, but rather by Brendan and Juliana. Phone records, internet activity, text messages and computer evidence all pointed toward a carefully orchestrated deception rather than a random home invasion. Detectives also uncovered evidence of Brendan and Juliana's affair, giving investigators a possible motive for the killings. As more evidence accumulated, police increasingly believed that Ryan had been deliberately lured to the home and that the crime scene had been staged. The investigation continued for several months while forensic specialists analyzed firearms evidence, electronic devices and witness statements. Detectives reconstructed the timeline leading up to the shootings and interviewed numerous people connected to the Banfield family. Their work eventually led prosecutors to conclude that the murders had been planned well in advance. In October 2023, Juliana Perez Magalhaes was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and several firearm-related offenses. Although Brendan had claimed self-defense from the beginning, investigators continued building their case against him while reviewing additional forensic evidence and Juliana's role in the conspiracy. As the legal proceedings continued, prosecutors negotiated with Juliana. Facing the possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison if convicted of murder, she agreed to cooperate with authorities. In October 2024, she accepted a plea agreement and pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in connection with Joseph Ryan's death. As part of the agreement, she promised to testify truthfully against Brendan Banfield. Her testimony became one of the most important pieces of evidence presented during Brendan's trial because she described the affair, the planning, the fake online profile and the events leading up to the shootings. Although the defense challenged her credibility by pointing out that she was testifying in exchange for a reduced charge, prosecutors argued that her testimony was supported by extensive digital and forensic evidence. Brendan Banfield's trial attracted widespread media attention because of the unusual facts surrounding the case. Jurors heard evidence about the fake online identity, the messages sent to Joseph Ryan, the affair between Brendan and Juliana and the prosecution's allegation that the crime scene had been deliberately staged. Prosecutors argued that Brendan had manipulated Ryan into coming to the house and then used his presence as part of a calculated plan to murder Christine while creating the appearance of self-defense. The defense maintained that Brendan had genuinely believed he was protecting himself and his family, but prosecutors pointed to the electronic evidence and Juliana's testimony as proof that the shootings had been planned long before Ryan arrived. After hearing weeks of testimony, reviewing forensic evidence and listening to arguments from both sides, the jury found Brendan Banfield guilty of multiple charges, including aggravated murder and related offenses. The verdict reflected the jury's conclusion that the killings were not the result of a spontaneous confrontation but rather a deliberate conspiracy. Brendan was sentenced to life imprisonment, ensuring that he would spend the remainder of his life behind bars for his role in the murders. Juliana returned to court for her own sentencing after fulfilling her agreement to testify. Prosecutors acknowledged that her cooperation had been valuable in securing Brendan's conviction and recommended a lighter sentence than she could have faced had she been convicted of murder. However, the judge concluded that Juliana's involvement in luring Joseph Ryan and participating in the conspiracy was too serious to justify a minimal punishment. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter, noting that while she had accepted responsibility and cooperated with investigators, her actions had contributed to the deaths of 2 innocent people and had forever changed the lives of their families. The murders left a lasting impact on everyone connected to the case. Christine Banfield's family mourned the loss of a daughter, wife and mother whose life ended because of a betrayal within her own home. Joseph Ryan's loved ones struggled with the knowledge that he had unknowingly walked into a deadly trap after believing he was meeting someone for a consensual encounter. The Banfield's young daughter was left without her mother and with her father imprisoned for life. The case also raised broader discussions about online deception, abuse of trust within au pair programs, and the devastating consequences of manipulation and infidelity. The Virginia au pair murders remain one of the most shocking criminal cases in recent American history because the investigation transformed what initially appeared to be a straightforward case of self-defense into the exposure of an alleged murder conspiracy built on secrecy, betrayal, and calculated deception. The combination of a hidden affair, a fake online identity, the manipulation of an unsuspecting victim, and the attempted staging of a crime scene captured international attention. Years after the murders, the case continues to be discussed by true crime audiences as an example of how modern digital evidence, forensic science, and persistent police work can uncover the truth behind a carefully constructed false narrative. Thank you for watching. If you want more factual and respectful true crime content, please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, stay safe.